Alright, hello everyone. We have a new deck tech here from Commander Legends. This is for Yurlok the Scorched Thrash, a 4-mana, Jund-colored legendary Viashino Shaman. 4/4 with Vigilance. A player losing unspent mana causes that player to lose that much life. And you can pay a mana and tap to have each player add black, red, and green to their mana pool. Or I guess they just added, they got rid of that terminology. So for those of you who are not aware, a while ago, mana burn used to be a thing where if you didn't use all of the mana that was in your pool, you would lose a life for each mana that you didn't spend. So this is a commander option that brings that rule back, which is kind of funny because they could do this for other rules. Just turn around and make them some kind of ability or some static ability. Overall, I thought Yurlok was one of the more creative commander options. Even though the deck I don't think is going to be that different, you could go elsewhere, and it's still going to be centered around burn damage. So to start off the deck, we have the most boring part. We have lands, about 38 of them. We have mostly just mana fixing in here. We do have a Bojuka Bog. We have a Kessig Wolfrun. This is also an easy way to deal some commander damage or to just deal a bunch of trample damage with some other creature. Really important to have some kind of mana sink in here, so that's why I have Kessig Wolfrun. You don't want to end up burning yourself, and the rest is pretty much just more mana fixing. We do have a lot of ramp in here. We want to get to our combos quickly, and we don't want to have to wait. The more that we can interact with our commander's mana, the better off we're going to be. We have Birds of Paradise, we have Deathrite Shaman, we have Sol Ring, Arcane Signet, Farseek, Golgari Signet, Gruul Signet, Rakdos Signet, Rampant Growth, Sakura Tribe Elder, Cultivate, Kodama's Reach, and Victory Chimes. Victory Chimes is an interesting card. It untaps during each other player's untap step, which means that you can pretty much just give a player of your choice a colorless mana every turn. With our commander, they will lose a life. The important trick about playing with this kind of commander is that you want to add the mana to everyone at a very inconvenient step where they're really not able to do much. So you could do this during combat, you can do this during the upkeep when people aren't really able to play sorcery speed stuff. That's really going to make it the best, so something like this does fit into the strategy. We have other ways of adding mana or just fooling around with mana. We have Belbe, Corrupted Observer. 2-mana zombie elf. She's a 2/2 at the beginning of each player's post-combat main phase. That player adds 2 colorless for each of your opponents who lost life this turn. So you can just give yourself more colorless mana and just use that for other combo pieces in the deck. You could of course just do this to give an opponent something like 6 colorless mana that if they're unable to use that for whatever reason, that's going to result in them losing 6 life. And then we have Leyline Tyrant, which pretty much just benefits us. We don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end, and when it dies, we can pay any amount of red mana. When we do, it deals that much damage to any target. Not going to be useful all the time. Obviously, we can add 1 mana of each color, so our unspent red mana could just be 1 at a time. But you're going to find that a lot of what we have is going to punish us if we don't tap out our mana. So we just want to spend that red mana anyway. Why not just give it to Leyline Tyrant? We do have a bunch of mana fixing anyway, so that should be able to help this card out. We have Horizon Stone, which is kind of the same thing, but if you would lose unspent mana, that mana becomes colorless instead. And then we have Mana Reflection. If you tap a permanent for mana and produces twice that much mana instead, which is good because it says permanent. So if we tap our Yurlok, it means it can tap for twice that much mana. You could also put in that Nyxbloom Ancient. That would definitely help the deck out a bit. But there are some combos that are possible if you have twice as much mana and you're able to keep untapping him. We have some removal in here. We have Assassin's Trophy. We have a Rakdos Charm to deal with graveyards. We have a Beast Within, a Chaos Warp, a Krosan Grip, and a Blasphemous Act. All pretty good removal. Not a lot of synergy here, it's just good stuff Jund removal. We are playing a couple tutors in here. We're playing Vampiric Tutor and Demonic Tutor because if you don't get to our combos, the deck is kind of pointless. I don't want to say there's nothing else you can do, but our deck is pretty much centered around abusing our commander's ability. So we want to have some very good tutors like these just to make the deck easier to play. We have some burn in here. We have Ankh of Mishra. We have Power Surge. Power Surge is interesting because this was a lot better when you did have mana burn, because then they'd pretty much be losing life either way. People can play around this, but because our commander pretty much brings mana burn back, it's just as good as it used to be. Citadel of Pain. At the end of each player's turn, which this is kind of a better power surge, Citadel of Pain deals X damage to that player, where X is the number of untapped lands he or she controls. So the way to play around this is that you just tap your lands, so you don't take any damage, but that would result in you having unspent mana, which means you'd be losing life off of Yurlok. Then we have Zozu the Punisher, which is pretty much just Ankh of Mishra, dealing 2 damage to a land's controller every time it enters the battlefield. We have Mana Barbs, so whenever a player taps a land for mana, it deals 1 damage to that player. A lot of these cards are going to force them to have unspent mana, so you combine that with dealing a damage to them when they tap their lands for mana. It's a pretty deadly combo. We have Nightshade Harvester. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, that player is going to lose a life, and you put a +1/+1 counter on her. And then we have Wound Reflection. I know this is a burn category, but any kind of lose life thing I also consider burn for this deck. At the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they've lost this turn. So that's also going to be deadly with our commander, because sometimes we can go off, but we can't go infinite. Wound Reflection will hopefully finish the job. We have some mana sinks because I think it's important to have ways to get rid of your excess mana that you're not using. Helix Pinnacle is a wonderful mana sink because it's also a threat. You can win the game with it. We have Sensei's Divining Top, which is also a fantastic mana sink because all you really have to do is just use all of your mana on the first ability however many times you want to. Doesn't matter if it's the same 3 cards and you're putting them back in the same order. We have Torment of Hailfire. Never really hurts to have a bunch of mana and not really have much to do with it because you could have cards like these. So if you don't want to win the way that this deck is supposed to win, you can just use all of the mana that you generate to Torment of Hailfire everybody, and when they have unspent mana, that'll likely finish them off. Then we have Zancha Sleeper Agent. This is also good. If you're giving everybody excess mana, you can kind of persuade them to kill another player. So if everybody's getting 3 mana, they can just spend that 3 mana easily, and whoever has Zancha will lose 2 life and they'll draw a card. If you can keep adding mana, then you've effectively killed this player. Then we have Gemstone Array. This is also a pretty good mana sink because it just stores mana. I do think the artifact that turns the mana colorless if it would leave is a little bit better, of course, but we could pay 2 mana and put a charge counter on Gemstone Array. We can remove a counter from Gemstone Array to add 1 mana of any color to our pool. So for every 2 you pay, it guarantees that you'll have a counter to remove so that you can get 1 of any color, which I think is fantastic. And then we have Heroic Intervention, Lightning Greaves, and Swiftfoot Boots for our protection, just in case we need a way to protect our commander. We do have some draw in here. We have Phyrexian Arena, Read the Bones, Wheel of Misfortune, which is nice because it throws in a little bit of burn in there. We have Harmonize, and we do have some return cards in here. We have Regrowth and Eternal Witness just to get back a combo piece if we need it. And then we get to the cool part of the deck, which is Untap. This is what we really need for our Yurlok. So we have Instill Energy. The creature we equip it to, so we can equip it to our Yurlok. We can pay 0 mana and untap the enchanted creature. We can only do this once during our turn and only once each turn, which is still pretty good for just 1 green mana. We can combine this with other untap abilities, and it can really help us go off in a single turn. We have Mage Right Stone. We can pay 1 mana, tap to untap target creature that has an activated ability with tap in its cost. We have Seeker of Skybreak, just a good old 2 mana elf that taps to untap a target creature. We have Staff of Domination. We can pay 3 mana and tap it to untap target creature, and then we can pay 1 mana to untap the Staff of Domination. So if we have a mana doubler or we have any kind of excess mana, you can get several untaps out of Staff of Domination, considering that we're also adding mana every time we tap our Yurlok. We have 1000-Year Elixir. We can activate abilities of creatures we control as if they had haste, and we can pay a mana and tap it to untap a target creature. And then we have Umbral Mantle. I wanted to play Hearthstone so much until I realized that it doesn't reduce the cost of abilities below 1 generic mana. So a lot of those infinites I thought were possible with Hearthstone are just simply not, but it's still going to get you close enough with cards like Umbral Mantle. You'll just pretty much be paying a mana each time to add more mana. But again, with a mana double or something like this is going to win you the game. We have Sword of the Perrunes. Again, you equip, it's effectively the same thing. You can tap or untap equipped creature for 3 mana. We have Seedborn Muse. Untap all permanents you control during each other player's untap step. So this one is pretty deadly, of course, as she always tends to be. If you can just keep untapping your Yurlok, it pretty much makes it difficult for your opponents to be able to use all the mana that you can tap for. We have some shutdown cards here, pretty much just making it harder for our opponents to spend the excess mana. So once we do have our Yurlok out there, if we can just keep tapping for mana, if our opponent's lands are tapped, then that means that they're not going to be tapping for the specific mana that they want. And if we can just keep them from playing spells on our turn altogether, we've likely won the game. So with City of Solitude, each player may play spells and abilities only during his or her turn. We have Dosen the Falling Leaf, which is kind of the same thing, without the ability part. We have Opposition Agent, which is just more of a good old shutdown card for tutoring. Also a newcomer from Commander Legends, which I think is going to be a good card for a long time. We have Price of Glory. Whenever a player taps a land for mana during another player's turn, destroy that land. So pretty much encouraging them to not use their mana at all, not tapping their lands on your turn. We have Stoneshaker Shaman, pretty much encouraging our opponents to tap their lands, because at the end of each player's turn they have to sacrifice an untapped land. We have Tectonic Instability. Whenever a land comes into play, tap all lands its controller controls. So you either get your mana out of the way, or you just won't have any lands to use. This is a great way to keep them tapped once you tap your Yurlok, making it easier for you to just burn them out that way. And we also have War's Toll to pretty much do the same thing, but it's a little bit better because whenever they tap a land for mana, they tap all lands they control. So anyway, guys, that's going to do it for Yurlok of Scorched Thrash. Very cool commander. I like that we have essentially the mana burn deck. But anyway, let me know what you think of the deck. You all have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next time.